Please,
his wife is not legal. She's from Europe.
She's legal.
How she was born in Europe.
Okay, why would her husband be running for president?
But she has U.S. citizenship, so that's just because she was born in another country does not mean she has a legal citizenship. I would go look it up for myself.
That was his grandfather, and his father was KKK members.
Okay.
So read the history.
KKK members, you mean? Yes. Not KK members.
They was Klansmen. KKK.
Klansmen, okay.
Who's against your color?
Okay.
Against your skin? Against your people, your ancestors?
I think the Democratic Party founded the KKK, by the way. Just saying.
Let me tell you.
When are you all going to start standing up for the majority? And here's who the majority is. I'm the majority. I'm a law-abiding citizen who's never shot anybody, never committed a serious crime, never committed a felony. I've never done anything like that. But it seems like every time we have one of these shootings, nobody wants to put the blame where it goes, which is at the shooter's feet. You want to put it at my feet. You want to turn around and restrict my right, constitutional right that's spelled out in black and white. You want to restrict my right to buy a firearm and protect myself from some of the very people you're talking about in here tonight. It's ridiculous. I don't think Rod Serling could come up with a better script. It does not make any sense. The law-abiding citizens of this community and many communities around this country, we're the first ones taxed and the last ones considered and the first ones punished when things like this happens, because our rights are the ones that are being taken away. The Crips and the Bloods on the other side of town, they're not going to turn their guns in. They're going to hold on to them. And what's going to happen when you have to send the police down there to go take them? The police can barely enforce the law as it is. As what I see, we demonize the police, criminalize and vilify the police, and we make the criminals into victims. And we're talking about restricting guns? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that when the police department's already hamstrung? You're not going to be able to go down here and take these guns from these criminals. So the criminals are going to hold on to their guns. They're still going to have them. They're still going to break in my house, and they're still going to shoot me with them. And guess who's going to be the one that suffers? It's going to be me. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, it is not going to happen without a fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean shots fired. I don't mean fist thrown. I mean, I'm going to come down here to this city council and raise hell just like these loonies from the left do until you listen to the majority of the people in this city. And I am the majority.
That you are talking about rich millionaires. You guys within the Democrat left wing group have many more millionaire hypocrites that have been blessed by being in this capitalist country where you have free will to make money, and somehow promotes this socialism that actually traps people that look like you and me, blacks and browns and poor white folk. Well, so I don't get this hypocrisy of blaming Kanye for being a brave celebrity within Hollywood, where he pays a penalty for that.
They're going to send poor people to try to take guns. They're going to send Trump supporters to take guns. Liberals are not going to take their own guns or take guns from people. They're going to be like, oh, they're scary. Oh, so when we come for you, you're not coming for anything. You're a soy boy liberal. You're scared of your own shadow. You're not taking anything. You're just like, here's a gun.
Color,
have you met
a teacher?
No, I'm an American.
Yes, but you're still a person of color.
No. I'm a black man in America. Okay, I don't like this people of color stuff. I'm not a different category. I'm an American that happens to be black.
All lives matter. Number one, all lives matter. Okay? God made us all. God made us all lives matter. So if you want to separate yourself and put yourself on a platform about black life, but what about that yellow man? What about that orange person? What about that purple person? What about them?
One of the problems with the black community is how we're perceived. So look, when we're talking about rap, when you compare it to the statistics, how 40% of violent crimes are committed by young black men. Hold on. It's a perception. It is a perception. When we talk about, you go on the internet and we talk about selling drugs, pimping women, armed trafficking, fraud, and all these things, and people who don't live in black neighborhoods, people who don't live in black neighborhoods, gentry neighborhoods, all they see is what they know online.
White House is
and it is a perception. And when we hear police officers, 40% of the police officers who were killed in the line of duty were killed by young black men. It is only reasonable sometimes, not saying this is bad. sometimes it is reasonable for a police officer to handle black men with a little bit more caution than it is for a 5'2" Chinese man, for instance.
Really think that Mr. Trump cares about you?
He's hired more black people than probably you have. He's hired more Latinos, more Muslims than anybody else has. Obama's killed more Muslims than Donald Trump has. Just
I don't think the Democratic Party cares so much what she knows. They think about what she represents, which is simply put a distraction from the fact that the Democratic Party brought us slavery, they brought us the KKK, they brought us Jim Crow laws. It is just another guise, another ploy for them to distract voters by saying, look, it's a black woman. Don't pay attention to all of the dirt of everything that we have done to put black people down.
These are your rights. They are not my rights. I am a defender of your rights. Now, as it relates to the Second Amendment, it has special meaning to me. And here's why. As you know, when this country was formed, this Constitution didn't apply to the slaves. But guess what? This Constitution allowed the brilliance of the Founding Fathers. This Constitution allowed for us to eventually get it right. And we did with the 13th Amendment that freed the slaves. But the 13th Amendment only freed the slaves on paper. And many of you may know it was the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause that said this document applies to all citizens in the United States, and that included newly freed slaves. My ancestors fought as well as the Founding Fathers for this document to apply to us. Let me tell you what Frederick Douglass said about the right of self-defense. Douglass strongly supported the right of fugitive slaves to have and use weapons to resist kidnapping. When government fails to protect the just right of any individual man, that man rests on his original right of self-defense, even if it means shooting down his pursuers. Slavery is a system of brute force. It must be met with its own weapons. He went on to say that freedom was worth fighting for. Slaves plus guns equaled freedom. The abolition of slavery was inevitably due to the arming of blacks. Now, if you think for 1 minute that I'm going to cede these rights back to the federal government or any court, you better think again.
I'd give up my gun when everybody else does.
And is that
doesn't that make sense?
Well,
doesn't that make sense? I mean, if you were if there were guns here, would you want to be the only person without one?
So do you carry guns routinely at home? I mean, you have a gun at home?
Yeah, it's legal in the United States. It's part of our Constitution. You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny. Not to hunt. It's to protect yourself.
The American public is tired of this class warfare. The reason why they don't like Mrs. Bill Clinton is not because she's a woman. It's because she's dishonest and because she is hiding something. She's hiding the truth. She tries to play herself off as a victim, like she's Little Red Riding Hood, but she's more like the big bad wolf. As soon as you turn your back on you, she'll bite you. Now look, this is politics. It's a contact sport. It's not for the faint of heart. My response to what President Obama said is if she can't stand the heat, she should get out of the kitchen.
Their message is peace and coming together in the country. What's your message?
You don't believe that for 1 minute, do you?
That their message is?
Yeah.
That's what they said to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe them. Of
Any
course
protests over the deaths of these cops today in Baton Rouge?
I don't know that. I don't know that.
Any riots or protests over the police officers in Dallas, Texas?
What are you asking?
It's a pretty simple question.
I asked you if what's your message to the people. Their message is one of peace. What is your message?
My message has been clear from day one 2 years ago. This anti-cop sentiment from this hateful ideology called Black Lives Matter has fueled this rage against the American police officer. I predicted this 2 years ago. So what I want to know,
okay, Sheriff.
Do I want to know?
With all due respect, do you know that this was because of that?
Yes, I do.
As a law enforcement officer?
I've been watching this for 2 years. I predicted this. This anti-police rhetoric sweeping the country has turned out some hateful things inside of people that are now playing themselves out on the American police officer. I want to know, with all of the black-on-black violence in the United States of America, by the way, when the tragedies happened in Louisiana and Minnesota, you know that 21 black people were murdered across the United States? Was there any reporting on that?
There was a black officer who was killed today. But
I wish, Don, I wish you had that message of civility
have a conversation
toward this
with you.
Hateful ideology, these purveyors of hate.
You don't know what my message is.
That's
what I
what
want
they
to say
do.
to you is,
these people preach vile and virtue
we'll be right
in the
back.
name
We're
of
gonna go to break,
hate.
and we'll be.
Never let a good crisis go to waste, and I think this is what you see the liberal progressive left doing, is taking something and making it a manufactured political crisis to keep people distracted from what is really going on. The deaths of the 9 people in Charleston were horrific, but let's talk about the deaths of all the young black men in Chicago, which, if you look at a comparison to the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, you've had more young black men killed in Chicago than you had in the combat zones. When you look at what is happening with the failures of the black family and the decimation in the 50 years since the Great Society programs of Lyndon Johnson, we've gone from 77% of 2-parent households in the black community down to 25%. That's what we should be talking about, not about a piece of cloth.
It is not based upon the color of his skin, but it's about the content of his character. And the sad thing is that when America is not at its best, you have people like Barack Obama and Eric Holder that want to complain about skin color because they're devoid of character. That's the difference between America at its best and America not at its best.
Monolithic thinking, and that's what I've always been punching back against, because at the end of the day, it doesn't always even make sense. What you bring up doesn't make sense to me when you say he needs to have some more black faces. That means nothing. We saw that with President Obama. He had every black artist in the White House for photo ops, and at the end of the day, Chicago was worse off after 8 years of Obama in office. So I don't need to see a black face. I need to see black results. I mean, I find it insulting to me that people say, well, let me pander and let you know we've got Beyonce and Jay-Z on stage, so I'm with her. No, I'm not with her. Her husband locked up more black men than any president in the history of the United States.
Is outside a school with an image showing an attack on the president of the United States.
You know, it's unacceptable, but I don't blame the students. I don't blame the parents. I don't blame the artists. I blame the media. I blame the celebrities for making people think this is acceptable behavior. Every award show we watch, they're mocking the president. We have songs that are coming out that are mocking the president. We have Snoop Dogg releasing albums that show the president dead, where he's pretending to shoot the president. What do you expect the response to be when they're watching people that they idolize say that this sort of behavior is okay? Of course, it's going to start to take place on a more molecular level, and that's exactly what's happening here.
The mentality is not cool. I don't know why people like being oppressed. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. I love oppression. We're oppressed. 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, which, by the way, none of you guys lived through. Your grandparents didn't. It's embarrassing that you utilize their history. You're not living through anything right now. You're overly privileged Americans.
Jimu, I find that to be really disingenuous for you to stand up there as a black American and defend the Democratic Party when we understand that over the last 60 years, they have completely decimated our communities. That is not an opinion. That is a matter of a fact. Single motherhood is up 71%. That is 100% a fact that single motherhood is up 71% since the 1960s. We also see that in every major area, urban areas where you guys have a stronghold, our communities are decimated, okay? We have high crime rates. We have black people dying and killing one another. So I find your entire platform here to be completely disingenuous, okay? Donald Trump represents the very first opportunity for black Americans to jump off of this ideological slave ship that is the Democratic Party. And quite frankly, you should be ashamed that you're over here laughing at what our community is going through. I won't put up with that. That's ridiculous.